go ahead and get it started off with Indian Predator. Michael, what is our overview? What did the audience miss?
Okay, so I first have to start this out with a giant trigger warning because this might be one of the most gruesome series I've ever watched. If you're very squeamish towards severed heads, mutilated corpses, just human organs being displayed around, or just the thought of someone eating someone's brains out, literally, this might not be the show for you. But for those that like that kind of stuff, this is actually probably one of the coolest, I would say, true crime series that I've ever watched. Once I got past the squeamish parts and the gruesome, I really got to see kind of what this docu-series was all about. So just for a brief context, what Indian Predator is about: in 2001, journalist Dheerenda Singh's helpless and dismembered body was found after going missing for several days, and eventually they arrested a the husband of a local politician, Raja Kolander, aka Ram Niranjan, and they were arrested for the suspicion of the murder. Pretty much they found out that there was a diary that this person had with a bunch of names, about 14 people, and they were eventually able to find out sets of human remains on this pig farm. And so this series takes you on a journey of just theories of what may have happened to what may have happened with this serial killer. It kind of gives me a little bit of Silence of the Lamb type vibes, and it takes a little bit look into the caste system as well. A lot of these theories really dive deep into a lot of different avenues on not only why the murder may have occurred in the first place, but two, just as someone who's not very familiar with the Indian caste system, I was definitely getting some vibes that you could see that there was a lot of prejudice behind tribal culture, I would say. Does that sound right, Em?
Sure, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, for me, and I think this series is also intended for a non-Indian based audience as well. I really think that if you're a viewer that may not be really familiar with the caste system in India, that this is pretty interesting to see on how kind of the profiling can happen in that area. Overall, I liked it. I'm really looking forward to some of the installments coming, but it's very gruesome. So I'm sure, I don't know if you guys are able to sit and enjoy this kind of stuff, but those are my thoughts on this series.
Not at all. It was really gruesome. It took a lot for me to sit through it. Definitely, of course, there were only 3 episodes to the entire series, but with those 3 episodes, it literally made me cringe, especially because there was a lack of evidence against the. I mean, there's huge lack of evidence, but this guy's reputation, Colander's reputation, was that of a ritualistic cannibal. And that reputation remains till day for sometimes. I don't know how fables are created around serial killers. As they say when the series starts off, they say, there are murderers and there are, people who commit crimes, but serial killers are method criminals. They should just be found and hanged. And that's what the journalist said, the journalist being interviewed. This is, of course, we reviewed the first installment of Indian Predator before this, which was the Delhi murders. So this is the second installment of the Indian Predators true crime franchise. And it just gives you a more in-depth analysis of the circumstances that led to the public characterization of Raja Kolander as a ritualistic serial killer. And of course, as Michael said, trigger warning, the gruesome archival footage with interviews of victims' families, law enforcement, and various witnesses and experts, and their perspective about Dheerenda Singh, who was a journalist who was murdered. And of course, the complicated legalities that were wrapped around this entire case. Who's this guy Kolander, who's actually now serving a life sentence, and his children actually say that he's innocent. They keep proclaiming that they're innocent, but I thought the entire series leaned more towards sensationalizing this entire true crime. What do you think?
I think at the end of the day, there were definitely a lot of implications of Kolander, being a ritualistic cannibal priest. A lot of assumptions too that he was eating the brains, and I do agree. with the style that this was kind of put together, it did kind of sensationalize it a little bit in the way that you would watch, you know, as I was saying earlier, the movie Silence of the Lambs with Hannibal Lecter. There was like a sort of, you know, since what would you say? Sensationalizing, you know, the villain, the cannibal per se. But it's interesting because I think that's what makes some of these things so gosh darn fun to watch. But at the same time, it is like very, you know, it kept me on the edge of my seat. Reading the theories was pretty interesting, but I do have to put myself into like the present day context that this is something real that happened, and there are a lot of allegations that this person was innocent as well. So, which makes you think even more, what exactly happened? What are the 14, you know, names, and what are the stories behind all of those? Is he actually, you know, a brain eater, or is this really just someone that may have been framed?
No, he kept saying throughout the series that he's completely innocent of all the crimes that he was convicted of.
So
I'll
one may
never
never
know.
know.